Well now, welcome back to Celticism, where every week I share slow Irish ghost stories to ease you into rest. Just one thing before we begin. If these stories help you drift off, tap like, press subscribe, and tomorrow morning leave me a quick comment to let me know how you got on. Now, here's a small trick. Don't close your eyes all the way, just let them soften, half open, half shut. Let the room blur and shift at the edges. The longer you sit in that soft focus, the heavier the rest of you will feel. Now loosen your brow, unclench your jaw, let your shoulders fall heavy. Breathe deep, stomach rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. Let your legs sink into stillness. This is your place to come back to every night. A fire that never goes out. A room that waits just for you. And now we begin. The first tale of the night is called Teresa Brennan's Child. Between the town and the bog stood a low cottage with a hawthorn by the door and a roof that took the wind like a drum. Teresa Brennan lived there with her daughter, Fionnuala. The house had 2 rooms down, a loft up, a small window that stuck in damp weather, and a floor of flagstones worn smooth in the middle. Fionnuala had been weak from birth, thin wrist, a cough that came in winter and never left completely. Fevers that rose for days, fell for a week, and rose again. Neighbours called her the poor Brennan child. Teresa called her my good girl. Teresa was a careful mother, too careful, some said. She kept the bed warm, she kept the room still, she kept tonics on the shelf, nettle, willow, yarrow, and a darker jar with no label. The teas were bitter. Fionnuala drank because Teresa asked her to, and because that's what a good girl does. There were rules in the Brennan house. No bare feet on the flags at dawn. No window open after sunset. No hair left in the comb. Burn it. And no iron by the bed. It fights the tonics, Teresa said. Most days Fionnuala sat with her back to the sun-warmed wall and watched the lane. Other children ran there, rope, ragball, shrieking laughter, and if she smiled too long at them, Teresa's voice came soft but firm from the half door. Inside now, love, you're flushed. Fionnuala obeyed. The door closed and the house went quiet. At night there was a hum under the floor, not a rattle or a knock, a steady low sound as if a hive far off were working or a kettle lived in the stone. It came most evenings after the last cup of tea. It grew loud on storm nights and quiet on Sundays. And when it swelled, Teresa held her daughter close and whispered a prayer that wasn't one the priest said. Agialin bisakar bikuan. What does it mean? Fionnuala asked. It means rest, Teresa said. Now close your eyes. The village spoke kindly on the lane and sharply at the table. Teresa was blamed for her care. Fresh air would make a new girl out of her, one would say. That woman minds the child too close, another would murmur. The priest came once a month, hat in hand, and offered prayers at the threshold. When the doctor came with his bag, he frowned at Teresa's jars. These are strong, he said. She's weaker without them, Teresa said. And the doctor left a white powder that went quiet as dust into the fire when his back was turned. An old woman, Moran Fionn, remembered a story about a fairy ring the Brennans had levelled long ago for a cowshed. The shed never stood square, she'd say. The milk soured quick, the luck went thin. People let her talk and changed the subject. Teresa brought more broth when her knees swelled, and when fairy talk began, she turned it with a smile. We've medicine and prayer, Teresa said. We've no need to fear. One evening in spring, Fionnuala did not drink the tea. It wasn't bravado. Teresa had gone to the yard to beat dust from the quilt. The cup steamed by the bed, the smell sharp, bitter with the sweet edge that caught the tongue. Fionnuala lifted it, hesitated, and poured it into the ash pan. The grey turned darker. She hid the cup under the bed. Next day she felt stronger. She walked to the hedge. Mickey Flaherty balanced a stick and a spool in the lane and made a cat box it like a prize fighter. He caught Fionnuala's eye, grinned and bent the stick in a bow. She laughed. The sound surprised her. Inside, love, Teresa said from the door. Your colour's high. It's the sun, ma'am, Fionnuala said. Inside, replied Teresa, still calm, and the calm was a chain. Fionnuala obeyed. That night the tea was lighter and sugared. Fionnuala drank, her sleep was heavy. The hum under the floor grew warm and pleased. Plates ticked softly in the press. A week later, the same thing happened. On days when Fionnuala skipped the cup, her legs had strength and her breath was easy. On nights when she took it, the hum returned and the room went cold at the edges. She told herself she was imagining it. She wanted to be a good girl. There were small things anyone could have noticed. Teresa burned the hair from the comb over the flame with a quick flick. She shifted the iron nail in the door frame from one side to the other and told a neighbour Tommy had fixed it, though no hammer had sounded. She chalked little crooked lines of salt on the floor, under the window, beside the bed, across the hearthstone, and brushed them away at dawn. She hung a roan cross over the door on May Eve, then tucked it behind the clock where it worked unseen. Why crooked? Fionnuala asked of the salt. Because life isn't a circle, Teresa said, and kissed her hand. Summer came late, thin and bright. Fionnuala's aunt brought a red shawl from the fair and begged to walk the girl to the stalls. A bit of bustle will do the heart good, the aunt said. Crowds steal breath, Teresa said. But noise is life, replied the aunt. Noise is fever, Teresa answered, and closed the door without a slam. The aunt stood in the lane a long time and stared at the hawthorn. That evening, Teresa brewed from the dark jar with the chipped lip. She measured by pinch and by eye. Something bright, a fine grain, fell from a folded paper into the steam. The scent sharpened. Fionnuala watched. "Ma'am," she said very softly, "do you want me sick?" Teresa's face did not change. Her hand rested, cup in the air. "I want you safe," she said. "Now drink." Fionnuala drank. The tea reached deep and caught. The hum under the flagstones started low, then steady. The candles leaned toward the bed and stayed there. The curtain lifted on a wind that did not show in the hedges outside. Teresa caressed Fionnuala's hair and began to hum a cradle tune. The room went dim around the edges, and thoughts that had been sharp went soft. "Am I dying?" Fionnuala whispered. "No," Teresa said, and she meant it. "Not tonight." On storm nights the cottage felt crowded. Teresa set 3 candles on the table and lit them one by one. She laid salt in 3 crooked lines. She closed the window and locked the iron tools by the back door. The hum rose. Sometimes there was a knock under the bed, polite, 3 taps, and then a second set of taps a foot to the left, as if something small had moved and wished you to know it. Teresa never jumped. She sang. The humming eased. "Who are you singing to?" Fionnuala asked once. "To you," Teresa said. "To anyone else?" "To no one who means you harm," Teresa said, and that was a true answer said sideways. By harvest, the child was 11. On good days she walked to the stile and watched the river. On bad days she slept with a wet cloth on her head while Teresa counted breaths. The priest talked of patience. The old woman talked of curses. Teresa said yes and no and nothing. Then came St. John's Eve. The hill fires set up, boys already snatching kindling from neighbours' gate. The Brennan cottage was still. Teresa kept the windows shut against the ash. The sky lowered grey. A storm threatened from the west. "May I watch the fire from the lane?" Fionnuala asked. "Not tonight," Teresa said. "You're hot." "I'm not." "It's in your cheeks." Fionnuala's hands were steady, but she was tired of asking. She nodded and lay down. Teresa kissed her brow and brewed from the dark jar. The room filled with the sharp green smell that now made Fionnuala's tongue pull away. She drank. She wanted to plead. The hum came quick and content. The candles leaned in as if to hear. A low wind pressed the door without rattling it. Moran and Fionn appeared at the gate at dusk with iron tongs in one hand and a small handbell in the other. She lifted the latch. It held. She rang the bell once. The sound was clear and thin. It cut through the hum and the candles quivered. Teresa stood up from the bed. "Go home, Moira," she said through the door. "The child's sleeping." "I'll stand here," Moira said. "I'll stand all night, if I must." "Go home," Teresa said again, and her voice had steel in it. The bell rang again. The hum faltered. "Ma'am?" Fionnuala asked. "It's nothing," Teresa said, and for the first time something strained in her voice. The faces at the window were quick, two pale ovals pressed to the glass, there and gone, like breath on a mirror. The room went colder. Teresa shifted, and in that shift something small and wrong showed itself. Her shadow did not rise with her, but a beat after, as if unhooked from her feet. Fionnuala saw it. She said nothing. Her heart worked. Teresa Brennan, Moira called, old voice hard in the stormlight. Bring the child out. Teresa turned from the door and let the pretense slip. Not fully, just enough to tell the truth. Her eyes shone too green for a heartbeat. Her hands looked strong and old at once, the skin pale, the nails clean as bone. When she spoke, her voice sounded like two voices, Teresa's and something under Teresa's. Listen to me, Fionnuala, she said. She knelt and held the girl's face in both palms. The touch was cool, not with fever, but with stone. I have loved you since you took your first breath, every cup, every stitch, every song, all love. But there is more to it than that. Long ago, your grandfather cut down a ring that wasn't his to touch. He was told. He did it anyway. The debt doesn't die. I was left in your grandmother's crib in payment. I grew up here. I married here. I learned to be human. I learned to love you. And I learned what is owed. Oh, to who? Fionnuala whispered. To the hidden folk, Teresa said. They take no souls by force there if another way is paid. They feed on ease, not death. Death is one bite. Ease is a long meal. When you sleep easy after fever, when your breath spreads and slows and your body lets go, that ease keeps them quiet under the floor and out of the fields. It saves the cows, it saves the milk, it saves the lame. That's the bargain I keep. Do you make me sick? The girl asked, eyes wet but steady. I keep you weak, so your ease comes, Teresa said, and the truth would put a weight in the room you could feel in your teeth. Do you love me? Fionnuala asked. With everything I am, Teresa said. She did not blink. That is why this has been possible. The bell rang a third time. Iron touched stone. The hum shrank and went mean. Bring her out, Moira said. We'll see which law is stronger. Go home, woman, Teresa said, and her shadow moved wrong again. Fionnuala sat up. She swung her legs over the side. She stood. Her body shook, but it held. She stepped over the crooked line of salt. It hissed at her heel and then lay still. Teresa reached for her sleeve and stopped with her hand in the air as if the cloth were under her fingers when it wasn't. Fionnuala, Teresa said, and the name sounded like the first time she'd spoken it in the delivery bed. I want to breathe without feeding anyone, the girl said. She said it simply, like a fact. Teresa closed her eyes. A thread that had run tight for 11 years and cut her when it gave. She opened her eyes and looked at the corners of the room where the others gathered. Not seeing clearly, only felt small attention, many of it, patient and hungry. She raised her chin like a woman who has finished an argument with herself. Go, she said. Go with Moira. Will you come? Fionnuala asked. I can't, Teresa said. Not now. Moira lifted the latch. The door opened to the storm smell and the wet hawthorn. The tongs met the threshold and sang once a hard, bright note. The hum drew back from it. Fionnuala stepped into the yard. The wind took her hair. Her breath went in and out. and no one counted it for her. Behind her, Teresa stood alone in the candle-lit room. Something moved along the skirting, not rats, not anything you could point to and name. The candles dimmed, the house sighed, the hum went thin as a mouse trail. "Your ease will be missed," said a voice that was no voice, from the floor and the lintel and the space between words. Teresa's mouth trembled. "Hush," she told them with a mother's reflex. "Not tonight." The candles went out of their own accord, polite as guests. Fionnuala slept in Moira's spare bed that night. She woke twice and listened for the hum. She heard wind, a clock, and the river. She cried once. It was a clean cry. In the morning she walked to the stile and breathed on purpose and counted for herself. The aunt came, hands on hips, and made tea on Moira's black stove. The priest called in the afternoon and left when Moira waved the iron tongs near his hat by mistake. The neighbours talked and then stopped talking because talking made them think too much. People saw Teresa after that, only in glimpses, a shape in the window at the Brennan cottage when no one should have been there, a figure at the bend of the lane at dusk that turned away before a name was said. The hawthorn by the door grew thick and healthy. The boys left it alone without being told. The Brennan house stood quiet for a season. When someone lifted a flag in the kitchen, and don't, the stone underneath was cold even at noon. There was no jar, no charm, no sign of anything. The cold itself was the sign. It held the memory of a long bargain. As for Fionnuala, she grew slowly. She tired easily for a while. She learned to sit in the sun without guilt. She learned to walk to the river and back. She learned to laugh at the right time and not to laugh when a thing isn't funny. Sometimes, in a quiet room, she felt a hand steady her foot as it came down the way a mother will lay her palm under a child's step on the last stair. She never turned to look. She said thank you once, into an empty kitchen. Years later, men would say the field where the fairy ring once stood finally took grass properly, and the cowshed set on the new site stood square. Milk kept, babies thrived, wind was only wind. It was as if hunger had been turned away to feed somewhere else, or to wait. Fionnuala kept the red shawl. She wore it on her wedding day, plain as anything. When her own girl was born, she slept with the window unlatched on summer nights. She burned the hair from the comb because old habits are hard to break, then laughed at herself and stopped. She set no crooked salt line. She tied a rowan branch over the door and left it there where everyone could see it working. If anyone asked about her mother, she said, "She loved me." Then she said nothing more, which was the truth, and at the end of the story she was willing to tell. And in the old Brennan cottage, if you pass at dusk and look quick, you might see a woman sitting by a cold hearth and her head bowed, counting something. Not money or rosary beads, breaths. She looks up if you look too long. She has green eyes. You'll walk on without meaning to. You'll forget what you were thinking. You'll sleep well that night. Breathe in and out. Let your jaw soften again. Let the weight in your legs spread. Now the house is dark, the road is empty, and sleep is coming. And so let's drift merrily along into the next tale of the night. And this tale is called The Curse of Deirdre Boyle. My name is Deirdre Boyle, and I am the only one left. I should begin with the night I stepped on it, the thing that cursed me. It was late, the path home running along the dry stone wall, the moon high enough to cast its pale net over the field. I heard a rustle in the grass, a quick shape, a shiver in the air, and then I saw it, no taller than my hand, pale-eyed with a crooked smile. I panicked, my heel came down sharp, and the fairy broke beneath me like a crushed bird. The silence that followed was strong. The grass swayed, though the air was still, and I swear I heard laughter, faint as a whistle in the hedges. I told no one. I thought it was over. But the curse began with the milk. Our cows gave thick cream, sweet as always, but those who drank it grew quiet and odd. The neighbour's boy was first. His mother, Bridget, found him crouched in the coal shed, chewing at the blackened end of his sleeve. When she pulled it free, there was bite marks on his arm. Soon after, others fell to it. They didn't stumble like drunks or howl like mad things. No, they sought corners and shadows, places where the light didn't reach, and there they gnawed fingers and wrists. I remember walking into old Nuala's cottage. The door swung wide, the fire gone out, and in the far corner she sat, her nitrous torn and wet with blood. She was chewing on her forearm, eyes glassy, rocking back and forth as though it soothed her. And she smiled when she saw me. By then it was spreading fast, the bread made from our grain, the butter, the milk. Every table and every home carried the curse, and every home fell silent. I tried not to eat, not to drink, but the hunger clawed at me, and then thirst burned. I knew if I gave in, I'd join them. At night I could hear them breathing in the walls, fingers scratching faintly, the sound of teeth clicking in the dark. One evening I went to the chapel, hoping to pray, hoping for some answer. I found Father Kearns there kneeling, his head bowed, hands clasped tight, but when he turned I saw he had no lips left. His teeth shone wet in the candlelight, and he whispered, "You'll be next." I ran. Now I keep to the lanes, the sea wind at my back, watching the cottages burn out one by one as the candles gutter. The smell of salt and iron fills the air. I've seen them crawling under carts, crouched in briars, crouched in lofts, never in the open, always in shadow. And I know why. That crushed fairy, I remember its eyes, pale and hungry and waiting. The curse wasn't just for me. It was for us all, a punishment for the step I took. I thought of leaving, finding a boat, but when I climbed the headland, when I looked out across the water, I understood. There is no leaving. no escape. The sea surrounds us on all sides, endless and black. This is an island, and I'm trapped here with them. And when the hunger takes me, I'll be the last to crawl into the dark. And now let your mind drift further into rest. The story has ended, but the night carries you onward. Breathe softly. Feel the heaviness of your body sinking deeper. And know you're safe here in the quiet. All you have to do is soften your eyes. Don't close them just yet. There's more stories to come. Breathe in and out and relax. And now for the next tale, and it's called The Crooked Woods. The fog was heavy that morning, clinging to the hills like damp wool. Lorcan Fitzgerald adjusted his collar and stepped down from the cart. The Daly estate loomed before him, a grey stone house crouched at the edge of the field, its chimney coughing thin smoke into the pale sky. Pierce Daly waited by the doorway, one hand tucked into his coat, the other gripping the rail as if to keep himself from falling. He was a big man, but his face sagged like wet clay. "You're Fitzgerald," Pierce said, his voice gravelling. The detective. "That's right," Lorcan said, brushing dust from his trousers. "You sent for me about your sister." Pierce gave a curt nod, then glanced back towards the hill, where the crooked woods twisted black against the fog. "I need. Folk will say she's mad, that she dabbled in things no woman should, but she's my blood, you understand." "Missing how long?" Lorcan asked. 2 weeks, maybe more. She was last seen heading into the woods. No one follows her there, not if they value their skin. But I'll not have her lost, not when her shame falls on my name. Find her, dead or alive. Before setting out, Lorcan walked through the village that lay at the foot of the estate. The streets were narrow, lined with thatched roofs darkened by sea wind. Men leaned at doorways, smoking pipes, eyes following him without warmth. At the inn, he asked after Neve. The innkeeper, a stooped man with yellow teeth, shook his head. "She was touched, that one," he muttered. Always muttering to herself, carrying strange bundles into the woods, dead birds and jars, Lord knows what. "We leave her be." "And the woods?" Lorcan pressed. The man spat into the fire. "Cursed ground, twisted trees, no birds singing there, no fox dares step inside. And if you hear chewing, lad, chewing when no one's there, you turn back." The man would say no more. The crooked woods stood waiting, black trunks twisted like knotted fists, branch knuckled together overhead, so thick the sky disappeared. As Lorcan stepped beneath them, the sound of the village faded. Even the sea was gone. Only his boots against soil and the faint swing of his lantern. The path was narrow, if it could be called a path at all. Roots broke the ground, slick with moss, and brambles clawed at his coat. Every step seemed to carry him deeper into silence. And then a sound, a steady crunch, wet and rhythmic. Lorcan raised the lantern. At the edge of the clearing stood a goat, its hide matted and rough, horns long and curling sharp. Its head was buried deep in a wicker basket, the kind a woman might use to carry a child. "Off with you," Lorcan muttered, tapping his boot on the ground. But the goat didn't move. It chewed, shoulders twitching, the sound louder, sloppier. Lorcan stepped closer. The goat lifted its head. Blood coated its muzzle, thick and black, crawling with maggots. In its teeth hung a strip of white cloth soaked through. A baby's blanket. Its eyes burned yellow, too bright, too knowing. The creature snorted, lowering its horns. Lorcan pulled the revolver. The first shot rang out, grazing the beast's shoulder. The goat screamed, not an animal's bleat, but a shriek, shrill and human, like a man set on fire. It charged. Lorcan stumbled back, firing again, but the thing drove him into the brush, deeper into the trees. His foot caught a root, and the ground gave way. He fell hard, lantern clattering, until stone closed over him. The lantern still burned, though cracked. Its dim light spilled over stone walls, slick with damp. The air was choking, thick with iron and rot. Lorcan staggered up and froze. Bodies hung from hooks driven into the rock upside down, arms swaying limp. Their throats were cut, their skin pale as gone cream. Some were fresh, their wounds still weeping. Others were stiff, grey faces slack with open mouths. Drunks, beggars, the sick, the useless, all drained like animals at slaughter. The tunnel stretched deeper, the stench stronger. Lorcan followed, hand tight on his revolver. The ground was sticky beneath his boots. The passage opened into a chamber. A pool sat at its centre, wide and still, dark liquid gleaming under the lantern's flame. Blood. Lorcan's breath caught, and from the shadows came a voice. "So Pierce has sent another hound. How thoughtful of him." She stepped into the light, Neve daily, thin as a starved crow, hair tangled black, face sharp with hunger and madness. Her dress was stained dark, stiff with dried gore. Her eyes burned with a feverish pride. "You're Fitzgerald," she said, "the detective, the one who scratches at locked doors." Lorcan raised his gun. "Your brother sent me to bring you home." Her laugh cracked like stone. "Home? To Pierce? To that pompous wretch who called me cursed from birth, who spat at me at the table, who told me no man would wed me? No, detective, I am here. I am home here. I have worth here." She gestured toward the hanging bodies. "Do you see the drunk, the lame, the broken? No one mourns them. Their lives were nothing, but their blood has value. It is coin. It buys power. And I have been chosen to spend it." The pool rippled. A breath rose from the dark, deep and rattling. From the back of the chamber, two eyes opened, glowing red, A scrape of scales dragged across the stone, and a long arm, rigid and scaled, slid into view. Fingers stretched, webbed into the beginning of wings. The thing breathed again, wet and slow, as if tasting the air. Lorcan fired into the dark. The shot cracked, echoing, but the beast didn't move. Only the breathing deepened. Neve's smile widened. You feel it, don't you? The weight of what waits beyond. A bridge, detective, a bridge between worlds, and blood is the toll. And when the bridge is built, Pierce will see, they'll all see. Behind her, the goat limped into view, its muzzle still dripping, teeth too sharp, too human. It bared them in a grin. My puka, Neve whispered, my guardian bound to me. The goat lunged. Lorcan fired, the bullet striking its side. The creature reeled but drove him back, horns smashing against his shoulder. He stumbled against the pool, the stink of blood filling his throat. The shadow stirred. The red eyes burned brighter, and a hiss rolled out of the cavern. Desperate, Lorcan snatched the lantern from the ground and hurled it. Flame burst across the pool, racing along the slick stone, climbing the walls. The cavern roared with fire, smoke pouring thick and choking. Neve screamed, shrill and furious. The puka shrieked as fire caught its hide. And from the back of the chamber, the thing in the dark bellowed, a sound that rattled the stone, half animal, half human, full of rage. Lorcan ran, smoke clawed his lungs, heat seared his face, but he forced through the tunnels, past the hanging dead, past the choking dark. The cave shook with the beast's roar and Neve's laughter, twined together until it was impossible to tell them apart. When Lorcan burst from the woods at dawn, he was black with soot, suit torn, hands burned. He staggered into the road and dropped to his knees. The village stirred in the distance, smoke rising from the chimneys, children chasing hens. They had no idea what lay beneath their hills. Lorcan wiped the blood from his hands, staring at the crooked woods. He never returned to Pierce Daly. Some truths were too heavy to tell. And in the heart of the cave, through smoke and shadow, Neve Daly laughed still. And now, as the crooked woods close behind us, let yourself release the weight of the story. Breathe in slowly, feel your stomach go out, and exhale and feel your stomach draw in. Feel the heaviness in your arms, the quiet in your chest. Fire fades to ash, leaving only warmth. And you are safe, far away from those woods. Every breath carries you deeper into calm, deeper into rest. Soften your eyes, loosen your jaw, and drift gently further into the night. And now, as you settle in, open your ears and close your eyes for the final tale of the night. A tale called The Borrowed Hours of Danny Morris. Danny Morris was a fiddler, known in every townland for his fierce playing and his sharper tongue. In the mid-1800s, when the nights stretched long and the bog fog swallowed whole fields, folk whispered of the fairies who stole milk, spoiled crops, or carried off children who strayed too far. Most people lowered their heads, muttered prayers, and left offerings, but not Danny. He would sit at the fireplace with his bowl tapping against his knee and say aloud, "Why should we bow to shadows? If they take our cattle, we'll hunt them. If they steal our children, we'll march on their forts with fire and iron. Enough of this nonsense." Older men warned him to hold his tongue. Wives clutched their crosses tighter when he spoke. But Danny was bold, too bold, and soon some of the younger men listened. A day might come when he could rally them, and the fair folk knew it. One winter night, alone in his cottage, Danny tuned his fiddle. He'd heard an old saying that if you played a reel backwards, you could draw the attention of the other side. He didn't believe it, but his pride pushed him. He set bow to string and dragged out a tune no man had ever heard. A reel unwound like smoke in reverse. The notes slithered through the rafters, wrong and haunting. When the last note faded, the room seemed to tilt. The fire dimmed, though no wind came down the chimney. A shimmer like heat haze drifted at the far end of the room. Danny blinked, and before him opened a path of silver light. And Danny, he stepped through. What he found was Ireland, but not the Ireland he knew. Fields glowed greener than spring had ever allowed. The stones of the walls were carved with natural swirls as though the land itself bore runes, and the trees slowly shifted their roots from place to place like great cattle moving at pasture. Across the meadows, fairy lights bobbed like lanterns, and soft music drifted from no clear source. The sky was always soft gold, neither day nor night, and the air itself smelled of honey and rain. Figures welcomed him, tall and fine, with eyes too bright to be human. They laughed softly and offered him bread sweeter than he had ever tasted, drink that shimmered as though caught between water and wine. They bade him play, and his fiddle sang in their hands, strings humming without touch. Danny thought he stayed but an hour, no more. He wandered gardens where flowers spoke with voices like children, saw rivers where fish leapt like sparks of silver fire, and sat in circles where tales were told without words, only images drawn in the air. It was beauty beyond reason, and though some part of him remembered his hearth, his wife, and his children, the place held him like a dream. At last, a woman among them, tall, crowned with woven rushes, spoke plainly. "You are welcome here, Danny Morris, and you are safe among us." Danny frowned. "Safe from what? I came of my own." Her gaze sharpened, and the others grew still. "You would not have always come in peace. We could not kill you. Your thread is bound too tightly to the world. But we could not let you raise an army against us. We borrowed your hours, Danny Morris. A tragedy was waiting for you, a child lost, and he would have turned on us with rage. He would have filled men's hearts with iron and fire, and he would not have listened to reason. Danny tried to speak, but her words folded around him like a shroud. "We do not do this for cruelty," she said, "but survival. Forgive us, for we could not let you live in your time." The next blink, Danny was standing in his cottage once more, the fire cold as ash. His fiddle lay warped on the chair. He stumbled outside, thinking an hour had passed, but the thatch of neighbours' homes was fallen in, walls collapsed with moss. The lane he once walked was overgrown with briar. A stranger met him with a stick in hand, and when Danny cried his name, the man only frowned. It was the same village, but not the same time. He learned, through trembling lips of a woman bent with age, that it was nearly the 1900s now. More than 50 years had passed. His wife was long buried, his children too, save one daughter, now an old woman near death's door. Danny wept, his knees weak beneath him. What had felt like an hour had been a lifetime, stolen from him. He saw in the woman's eyes the truth of the fairy's words, the chance for anger, for uprising, for vengeance. It was gone. His people were scattered, too old or too dead for armies. His fury was hollow, and the fairies had survived. So the tale of Danny Morris drifts away like smoke. He played one tune backwards and lost a lifetime, not through malice, but through a strange bargain of survival. As you rest now, let your own hours remain your own. Feel your breath moving slowly, easy and calm. Your body heavier with each exhale, your thoughts lighter with each inhale. Let your eyes soften, your jaw slacken, and your shoulders drop. There's no need for haste here, no borrowed time, no stolen years, only this moment, safe and quiet. And as your body sinks deeper into comfort, your mind may leave behind a little trace, a soft touch on the red button, a gentle press on the thumbs up, or even a few quiet words left below. Perhaps you won't recall it at all, but a part of you will. For now, let yourself drift into the storm, into the sound of wind, deeper, calmer, softer, and let them carry you into sleep. Good night.